All right, so we got a fuel pump here. They always go bad. Well, guys think they go bad on these Chevy trucks, but really, it's something else on the fuel pump. Let's take a look at it. So this is for 1999 to 2007 Chevy trucks. Cat eye. Vortec V8, 4.8, 5.3, 6.0. Here's the dash. You got all these gauges, and when the fuel gauge doesn't work, guys will be like, oh, my gas gauge is broken. Well, it's never the gauge. It's always the wires. It's always the sending unit. This one works properly, so when we turn the key, we get an accurate fuel reading, no problem. Don't go taking apart the gauge and the cluster. The problem's not up here, I promise you that. All right, we got a fuel pump right here off of a 2006 Chevy Silverado. Let's take a look at it. So these fuel pumps last a long time, but the fuel sending unit for the gas gauge always breaks first. So this is what we're taking a look at right here. This is the fuel sending unit, and you can see this one is all burnt up. Kind of concerning. I don't know why it's all black like that, but it was submerged in gas, so yeah, that worries me a bit. But what happens is these fingers right here get worn out. So it's got these little contacts, and they move up and down. When the gas moves up and down, you have the float right here in the tank, and as the gas level moves, it moves this, and it registers on the dash how much fuel you got in the tank. So my fuel sending unit in the red truck was bad for like a year, and I didn't want to do it. I was busy, right? So I ran out of gas so many times. I remember the worst time. I thought I had a half a tank, whatever. I didn't. I ran out of gas on the side of the road, you know, dark, midnight. Had like an empty milk jug walking on the side of the road to get gas, to get the truck started. So like, it can get bad, guys. I did that more times than I'm willing to admit, but if your fuel gauge isn't working on one of these trucks, you definitely need to fix it. So low gas is like this, high gas is like this. And then the fuel pump is down in here, right down in there. It doesn't really go bad, you know. I see these things fail, and when they fail, it's always this first, and the fuel pump more than likely is still working properly, still getting good pressure. Here's another one off of the Avalanche right here, same deal. But these contacts will get burnt up, and the little fingers in there won't register on here anymore. So what happens is you got these little fingers on the fuel sending unit, and then what it does is when the gas goes up and down, it moves the fingers. There's a different resistance. It lets the computer know, the gauge know, okay, there's this much gas in the tank or the tank's empty. So what happens is it's not built very well, and it gets burned up like this one. So you gotta drop the whole tank or lift the whole bed, get in there and swap it out. So unfortunately, you can't just buy this separately. Most of the times you got to buy the whole assembly. It's called a fuel pump assembly. You got to get the whole assembly and replace it, but it's got to be done because they don't sell this little thing individually. So even if you got a good fuel pump, your gauge isn't reading right, you got to swap out the whole thing and lift the bed or to drop the gas tank in order to replace the whole thing. And now every time you do this, you're gonna cut off the connector, and we gotta replace it with a new connector because they get corrosion wicked up in here, so they'll send you a new connector. You gotta swap them out, make sure it's wired right. Don't just reuse the harness on the truck because you will run into problems. So these wires going into the top of the fuel pump will cause you a ton of problems. So the thick ones are for power, this is the ground, this is for the sending unit, the gas gauge, and then this is for the 12-volt power. So they'll change the wires up on you. Some of these aftermarket fuel pumps, they will change them. You can see they don't match. I've had to change these connectors around, repin them so they match, but you gotta make sure whatever you take off the truck, the new fuel pump wiring matches what was on the truck, or else the gas gauge will never work properly and the fuel pump will never work properly. So on this truck, we got the power on the outside and the fuel gauge on the inside, but I have seen them all switched up, you know, purple over here, orange over here, whatever configuration, and it doesn't work when you put it all back together. So I make sure that this purple goes to one of these right here, this orange goes to one of these right here, and then I make sure this black goes to this black, and this gray goes to this gray, and I'll break out the multimeter and test them from here to make sure it's wired properly, because I put them back together and then they just don't work. So yeah, you have to look out for that. Real quick, this purple wire goes right there to that one. And this orange wire right here goes to that one. So we know the fuel sending unit is wired properly. I checked the black and gray the same way with the multimeter, and they're matching up too. So the wiring on these fuel pumps is always a pain. Don't get intimidated. Y'all can get it fixed. I promise you, you get in there and you check the wires, make sure they're good, then you'll be good to go. Now, of course, we want to check the fuse box up here. So if we take a look at the fuses, we will see right here, F pump right there. That's your fuel pump. So come over here, and this is the fuel pump relay right here. We want to check it to make sure it's good. Now the wires under here, under this, can get damaged because they can pass too much current and it'll get hot and the fuel pump won't turn on and off. That can cause us some problems too. So here's the bottom of the fuse box right here. These are called like fuse blocks, and you can take them out and you can get in there and fix the terminals on those relays, because these correspond to the relay where it plugs in, and they can get burned up in there because they pass a lot of current, you know, down to that fuel pump. If it's not coming on, you might want to pop one of these off and get it cleaned up. So the relay, you know, goes in there, and then on the bottom side, that's what corresponds to these pins. And make sure that it didn't get too hot and burn up those pins, because if it did, that fuel pump will never come on. But as far as I know, the fuel sending unit is separate from this. So this isn't for the fuel sending unit, it's just that the fuel pump isn't working properly. Let's take a closer look at these fuel pumps. I got some more tips for y'all. All right, so now on these fuel pumps, you'll say, okay, it's time to swap it out. Well, let's look at them. So we need a new fuel filter, right? So we'll just pop one on the bottom. Well, this is an old one. This is a 2002 fuel pump off of a Chevy Avalanche. You know, it's the same as a Tahoe or Suburban, something like that. But the 06, they decided, let's get rid of it. Let's just not have an internal fuel filter. Well, it's supposed to be inside there, you know. I've taken these apart before and I've found them in there. It's got a little filter inside of there, but you can't just swap it out. You got to get a new assembly, right? I mean, go figure. So on this, you know, you can pop these off. Yeah, see, it comes right off just like that. And, you know, you'd think you could do it on that, but on the 06, they got smart and they decided, you know what? We're just going to make it one big unit. Pull it out, put the new one in, and we're not even going to worry about the filter. And then right here, the fuel sending unit, you know what? Let's just make them swap out the whole entire thing. So that's what you got to do, unfortunately. So while we're at it, you know, we might as well take a look at the fuel regulators. So this one doesn't have one, and they're external. On the older trucks, the drive-by cable, 99 to 2002, it's got an external fuel regulator. On this one, it's built in, because this is an 06 and it doesn't have an external regulator. It's an internal regulator. So that's built in to the fuel pump assembly too, which is down in the tank. On the 99s to the 2002s, you know, you could just swap them out right on side of the intake. But on the 06, once again, it's all built into one. Filter, fuel pump, sending unit, and then the regulator is all built in to the one unit. So the fuel pump's down in there, and you know, I've done it before. You can take apart this whole plastic thing and just swap out the fuel pump. But I mean, it's not really worth it. And you run into a lot of problems because these old hoses and all this stuff, you know, you can get just a fuel pump and swap it out. It's really not worth it, especially on this where everything is built into one. If you just swap out that fuel pump, you got an old regulator, you got an old wiring harness, you got an old sending unit, and you'll be back in there again doing it twice. I promise you that. So that one right there, so the 06, that's a Delphi fuel pump. I always try to get Delphi or GM Genuine or AC Delco or whatever they're calling it, because they're the best. You know, you don't want to do it twice. You can try to get a cheap one, and I've done it before, you know, and they'll last as long as they last, but, you know, it's not a fun job to do twice. You also want to check to see the warranty too, because a lot of these fuel pumps have a lifetime warranty if you purchase them online, and they're like half as much online. But if you buy them locally, they're more expensive and they have a lifetime warranty too. So you also want to check the warranty, because lifetime warranty, if your fuel pump goes bad, pop it out, pop your new one in, and you don't have to buy it twice. So now when we turn the key, we'll know we got an accurate fuel gauge, just like that. It's reading accurately. We don't have any problems and we won't run out of gas. So that's it for the video. Easy to fix. Drop the tank, lift the bed, swap out the whole assembly. Unfortunately, you gotta swap out the whole thing if it's not working properly. So drop me a huge thumbs up down below. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more Chevy truck tip videos in the future. Later.